Get more into the Phillies conversation as promised. Joining us right now on 97.3 ESPN, Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad, as the Phillies split a doubleheader last night. And Bob, I'm still confused exactly how it happened. How you doing this afternoon?
What's up, man? How are you? I think everybody probably feels a little bit conflicted after watching those two games last night, yesterday afternoon. I mean, they lose the one they should win, and then they win the one they probably should lose when you're going into it. So, I mean, it was a whole mixed bag yesterday.
Yeah, and you know what? What was most ridiculous was, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, they lose the game, as you said, they should have won with Aaron Nola with his amazing performance, but then they win the game with the alternate red uniforms. I mean, maybe they just keep the red uniforms on the rest of the weekend until they lose again. Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, I think they're 2-1 now. I know we're talking small sample sizes here, but I think they're 2-1 in red, so maybe they should just ride that out here, man.
I mean, it's got to be better. Did you see the White Sox uniforms yesterday?
Yes, I did.
I mean, those are like pajamas. What is that?
Yeah, not good. Nah, not good. I actually like the red. I know that some people think it has a little bit of a Clearwater spring training vibe to it, but I think it's a nice look. Something a little different, you know?
Yeah, I'm cool with the red. I just didn't like the White Sox yesterday. When I saw that late last night, I was like, oof. I mean, that makes the red, like if there's someone who doesn't like the red, what I do is I just say, let me show you the White Sox uniform, and you can decide which is the better look at this point.
Yeah, well, one thing I can definitively tell you that is no matter what, it's better than what they're doing with the All-Star Game uniforms. I can tell you that.
By the way, those got to be the ugliest All-Star Game uniforms ever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone talks about, like, you look at the pictures from the 70s and 80s and all the classic uniforms and everybody kind of together wearing their city's uniforms. And, like, that's the look. That's the one thing aesthetically that's still kind of nice about the All-Star Game. And, and just to kind of, like, turn your back on the nostalgia element of it it's disappointing. It's like baseball just has no idea how to market itself. And this was, like, a way, I think, for them, they felt like to maybe sell new merchandise. Nobody's buying that stuff. I mean, come on.
Bob Wankel joining me here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's get into Aaron Nola for a minute, because I think a lot of Philly fans are conflicted about him. You know, he's a guy who has been amazing at times, like we saw yesterday. In other games, not so much. And while it was great to see him work out of a situation and then have that great 10 consecutive strikeouts, he finished with 12 Ks in 5 1/3 innings. What is Aaron Nola at this point in your eyes?
He's a very good starting pitcher. Everyone wants to have the conversation, is he an ace or is he not an ace? And listen, it just depends which numbers you want to look at. You can construct an argument that would tell you that he's one of the 10 best pitchers in baseball over the last 3 years and that he's an ace. And then there's, I think an argument to be made for that he's a second or third tier guy, maybe even. And, he's had his struggles this season. He's got to find some level of consistency here in 2021. He hasn't. He's had outstanding starts. He's had absolutely putrid starts. And, I think we saw that yesterday. He was fantastic. And then you go back to last Saturday against the Giants in San Francisco, and he was horrible. And many other starts this season, he's certainly battled it a little bit. So I still think that there's a high ceiling there. I still think that he's one of the better pitchers in the game. And I almost think that some of the frustrations with Aaron Nola are directed more so because the team as a whole is so inconsistent and has been so underwhelming. So it's easy to kind of look at the best players, the highest priced players, and maybe take out a little bit more extra frustration. It's still early on here. We're not even halfway through the season. He's still had some very good games. But when you talk to people, I think that the frustration is boiled over to the point where they're like, trade him. He's not that good. He's overrated. And I don't know that that's entirely fair.
Well, also, Bob, you need all the pitching you can get. Like, if you're serious about trying to maybe do anything in the division this year or maybe in the future, you need all the starting pitching you can get, right? Like, you can't just be handing away pitchers for nothing.
Yeah, I don't know, what you do there, right? Like, if you bring in a Zach Wheeler and sign him to the deal that you did, and you re-sign JT Realmuto, and you have Bryce Harper, you have all these win-now parts. I just don't think the Phillies are in any position where they would consider really selling off major parts, tearing this thing down, talking about another 3 to 4 year rebuild, because A, they're just not in a position as a major market team with expectations to do that after a 10-year postseason absence. And B, I just don't think that there's really any guarantee, as the Phillies have just recently proven over the last number of years, that it's going to get you to where you want to be anyway. So, people that are like, trade Aaron Nola, trade JT Realmuto, sell. I mean, listen, they can do some things to maybe reconfigure the complexion of the team a little bit, but they are not in position to make wholesale changes and sell off major pieces. At least I don't think so.
Bob, I'm glad you said it because it led me right into what I was thinking as well when I was driving in this morning, and that is, this Phillies team, you signed you signed Bryce Harper to all of that money, right? You brought back JT Realmuto. You brought in Dave Dombrowski. You convinced him to come out of that semi-retirement he was in, chasing that Nashville baseball team situation. You didn't do that to rebuild the team. So, what is a reasonable expectation that Philly fans can wrap their heads around for this season, Bob?
I mean, expectations for this season, I think you see what they are. I mean, maybe they put together some 3 to 4 week stretch here going through the beginning and into the middle of July where they get hot and they kind of force ownership. They force Dave Dombrowski to kind of become a buyer, and maybe they can get themselves back into this division race. But certainly, as currently constructed, I think the Phillies have proven that this current core with its complementary pieces aren't good enough. So, if you right now are looking forward to the Phillies at 4-10 today, that's great. And I'm not telling you that you shouldn't watch and that you shouldn't root and you shouldn't believe. But, at the same time, I think it's a long shot that this team is currently constructed is going to reach the postseason, make up 5 games on the Mets. I don't see it. But maybe they can ride a hot streak here, something they really have struggled to do, and maybe buy some complementary pieces that gets them back into it. But I think for 2021, I mean, you're looking at a team that is roughly a 500 team like they've been the last couple of years. And I really do think that when Dave Dombrowski came here, they made some, I don't want to call them win-now moves, but stay competitive moves. And I think that this thing has really been more about 2022. I think that this year was an evaluation year in a lot of ways for Dave Dombrowski. I think one of the reasons he's here is to not only figure out how to get this current group over the hump, but maybe kind of evaluate everything that has gone wrong throughout this organization from top to bottom over the last number of years. And I don't know that you can do that in just 2 or 3 months. So I really kind of look at this year as we're going to try to stay competitive, but we're also going to evaluate. And when we get to the off season, then we're going to put our foot on the gas and kind of figure out what we can do to get to where we want to be.
Bob Wankel joining us here on Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN at Bob Wankel CB on Twitter. Covers the Phillies for Crossing Broad. You can catch him with Mike Gill on the Sports Bash every Monday and Friday at 4:40 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. You mentioned the game today. We will be airing that here on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 3:30 with the Mets and the Phillies. And no, I don't expect them to win today because of Jacob deGrom. But my favorite part of the weekend is tomorrow, though, Bob, because tomorrow it's Jared Eichhoff versus the Phillies. How about that, a twist of fate? It's Zach Wheeler versus his former team, then Eichhoff versus his former team on each bump.
Yeah, I mean, first thing you have to do is just look and talk about Zach Wheeler and how good he's been. And I know that he struggled a little bit his last time out. He only lasted 3 innings. But we're in a situation here where you're looking at one of the best pitchers in the National League. I think he's a shoo-in for the All-Star game. And really, if you take away the guy that's going to be pitching for the Mets this afternoon, I think might be one of 2 or 3 odds-on favorites to win the National League Cy Young Award. So Zach Wheeler's been tremendous. Jared Eichhoff, if he's the guy that ends up going, I think the Mets actually right now have a TBD listed. I know there's been some talk that it probably will be Eichhoff. He's a guy, I respect the fact that he's kind of hung around and that he's got himself back to the major league. But that's certainly a matchup the Phillies should win. And, they're probably going to need to if they want to split this thing. Though, I will say this, man. Jacob deGrom, I believe, his last 5 starts, 27 innings, no runs, 7 hits, 3 walks, 43 strikeouts. So if you believe in the law of averages, and I know you guys are down at the shore, you stop in, you go to casino, and you look at the roulette numbers coming up, and you see, black hit 11 times in a row. You kind of walk up to the table and just say, it's due to be red one time. Maybe that's what you get with Jacob deGrom today. I'm just saying, maybe he's due to be human and maybe give up 2 or 3 runs today. Maybe the Phillies get something out of Zach Eflin and eke one out. Who knows? Crazier things have happened.
Well, also, Bob, let's be realistic. If you take the 2 games we saw yesterday between the Mets and the Phillies, both teams only scored 3 runs over 16 innings. So it's not like the Mets are coming in here, smashing the ball out of the ballpark. So if Eflin can just keep this a manageable game and the bullpen does a semi all right job, it's not like you can maybe just wait DeGrom out after about 6 innings.
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument the Phillies could have swept yesterday's doubleheader and they had 6 total hits between 2 games. Aaron Nola had 2 hits. Rafael Marchand had 2 hits, and I think they get the one out of Real Muto in game 1, and then obviously Harper's homer in the second game. So, yeah, you said it. I mean, Zach Eflin has cooled off here last couple times through the rotation. They really need him to get back on track. I think that he's kind of a key piece in this whole thing. If you're only getting consistently decent starts out of Nola and Wheeler, it's going to be really tough. So if they can get Zach Eflin back to where he really was the first 5-6 weeks of the season, starting today, it changes the outlook, I think, or maybe at least gives the Phillies a shot to kind of hang in things. But they need an outing from him today because he was flat out bad on Sunday in San Francisco.
Now, speaking of the bullpen, so they demote Neris. Alvarado comes in, blows the save. The next game, Neris comes in, no longer the quote-unquote closer. He gets the save. I mean, what the heck is going on with the Phillies bullpen at this point, Bob? It feels like, maybe Girardi just used to go out there and do what Kapler used to do, but like there's no roles anymore.
Yeah, I think they may be trending that way, to be honest with you. Hector Neris blows 3 out of 5 saves, 5 out of 15 overall, and they have to make a move. And it's not that they have a better answer. People were screaming for Archie Bradley. You saw what that looked like. I mean, he just does not have the arm, I don't think, to consistently close games in high-leverage spots late. You see what Alvarado did. And I actually thought Alvarado threw the ball pretty well yesterday, and he's thrown the ball fairly well overall now for the last 2 weeks or so. He was obviously impacted by Rhys Hoskins' inability to catch a throw from the mound yesterday with the sun. But the Phillies don't have a clear answer at closer, and I did ask Joe Girardi last night after the second game. I said, what have the last 24 hours done to you in terms of how you look at the closing role? And he said, well, for now, Alvy, meaning Jose Alvarado, is going to be the guy. So they've committed at least here in the short term to Alvarado being the guy, and it looks like that he will be the guy moving forward, at least over the next week or two. See how it goes. I wouldn't be shocked if Hector Neris gets more opportunities coming up here. They just don't really have another guy back there, and if they Phillies do make a run and get themselves in a position where they think about adding, I think they really have to consider bringing in somebody that can close games in the ninth inning. I think that really, in addition to maybe solidifying the back of the rotation, would be the move that they would be most likely to make.
By the way, I'm looking at the Phillies lineup for today, Bob, here at 4:10 p.m. Folks can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. Your infield is missing a name, and that's Alec Bohm. It's going to be Hoskins and Williams on the corners, it looks like, and then Torres and Maton in the middle. So, is this just giving Alec Bohm a day off to kind of gather his thoughts, or, is there maybe any concern we should have about Bohm's future?
Well, I mean, I think there's 2 things here. He's ground ball heavy, and he swung the bat a little bit better in June, hitting over 300, but talking about facing a guy like Jacob deGrom, this is a natural spot, I think, from an offensive standpoint where you can kind of give him a breather. But I think the other component is that, as you saw yesterday and as you've consistently seen throughout the course of the season, he is a well below average third baseman. And I know that the initial thought was that he would be able to athletically handle it and become an average to slightly above average third baseman. But the writing to me is on the wall there. I mean, he's just not good enough to stick at third base. I think long-term he's either a first baseman or a left fielder. I do think he has the athleticism to at least be adequate and catch some fly balls out there. But the 2 errors that he made yesterday, one on that little flare, at his waist that he drops. I mean, that's a ball that a JV high school player makes, 10 out of 10 times. And then in the 7th inning in the second game last night, a double play ball that he kind of just stabs at and opens the floodgates there and allows the Mets to tie the game. You just can't trust the guy right now, and it's a shame. Just the latest example of the Phillies having some young talent that you feel good about and things not necessarily panning out the way that you want them to. I wouldn't write off Alec Bohm. I'm not telling you that he won't be a productive player for a number of years for this team, but he's certainly proving that he is not a long-term solution defensively at third base.
Hey, if Pat Burrell can go to the outfield, why can't Alec Bohm, right?
That's exactly right.
Bob Wankel joining me here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN, at Bob Wankel CB on Twitter, Phillies beat writer for Crossing Broad. Bob, I want to ask you as well, little off the topic, Do we ever get the viewership numbers for Peacock over the weekend? Because I haven't been able to find them at all.
I actually have not heard about how those numbers went. My guess is just kind of based on the social media interaction. I didn't feel like as many people were engaged with the game. Maybe that's just because it was the beginning of the summer and it's a weekend and people just naturally weren't going to watch day games. Certainly Father's Day on Sunday might have impacted things as well. It's a shame because I actually thought the booth was pretty good with John Miller and Kruk and Rollins, and I believe it was Kukral was the other guy. Just a good booth. It was an entertaining broadcast, but a lot of people, like, I'll give you an example. My father's 74 years old. He watches the Phillies every day, and obviously sends me a text message and says, "Hey, where are the Phillies at?" And I said, "They're on Peacock." And he texted me back and said, "What the hell is Peacock?" So, I mean, I think a lot of people probably ran into that last weekend.
Well, also, it's the fact that this is not like YouTube where you just could type in like Phillies, or Facebook where you just go find the MLB Facebook page. Like, to get Peacock, you had to go through a whole process. And, for me, I was first of all, I was surprised there were no commercials on half the games. Like, most of the breaks, remember, it was, "Hey, we'll be right back after this." I was like, well, that's a little weird. But it's just the whole concept of, like, it feels like that experiment, like, failed miserably. That's why they're not hyping it up. I feel like if it would have went well, they would have been out like, "Look at all the viewers we had," and now we haven't heard anything about it since. I feel like they're like, all right, that didn't go so well.
Yeah, I think that may be partially it. I do think long term, unfortunately, with the regional sports networks and the NBC Sports Phillies and stuff like that, I kind of think that maybe the streaming element is going to become more prominent. So I think it was almost like a trial run, so to speak. I think that this is the direction, regardless of how well it went in terms of ratings last weekend. I think this is kind of where maybe some of these regional networks are trending. We'll see what happens here. But just in general, it's a shame with the broadcasting, listening to Tom McCarthy and the variations of Ben Davis and Ruben Amaro and Kruk, and the fact that these guys are calling a game from empty Citizens Bank Park when, the team's out on the road. It's a shame. I think that you lose something with that. And I know that there's financial considerations. I know there's COVID considerations and all these other different variables. But I do think that the broadcast, this is an element. Those guys are doing the best they can under the circumstances. But I do think something's kind of lacking with those guys not physically present at the stadium, too.
Well, also, Bob, you mentioned the financial considerations. At the end of the day, as long as these regional sports networks are still paying this obscene amount of money to teams like the Phillies and the Padres and the Giants, these other organizations around the league, the games are going to be on somewhere. They just might not be on the traditional, whatever channel it might be on. On an Xfinity, it's 846 or whatever is NBC Sports Philadelphia. People will find a way to watch the games. I just think you got to find a better way than putting it on Peacock. There's got to be a better way to make that available to people because, for example, like I said, you can find things on YouTube a heck of a lot easier than on the X1 platform.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hurdles that Major League Baseball is trying to figure out how to clear at this point. How do we make our game more accessible? How do we kind of usher it into the 21st century? Now here we are 20 years into it. I just think that they're struggling to find a way to make the game more visible to younger fans in general. And, the streaming component, the Peacock thing is just sort of one example, maybe the most latest example of this awkward line and their inability to kind of grasp what's going to work and what's not going to work. I will say that from a social media standpoint, baseball's gotten a lot better. The Phillies in particular and the clubs, the individual teams have gotten much better at social media and making the content a little bit more engaging for its fans. But I do think long-term, getting viewership, getting eyeballs, they've got to continue to work through a little bit of this murkiness here.
Well, in the meantime, people can pull up ESPN Plus and watch the Marlins game on Wednesday on ESPN Plus if they don't want to watch it on regular TV for whatever reason, I don't know. But anyway, there's that going for them. Bob Wankel joining me here on 97.3 ESPN. Give him a follow on Twitter at Bob Wankel. CB covers the Phillies for Crossing Broad. You can catch him every Monday and Friday on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill talking Phillies and other random topics. And as all guests, he appeared here on Sports Bash Saturday. Bob, appreciate you joining the show and enjoy the Phillies game if that's possible today.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. Anytime. I'll talk to you soon.